Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to episode 14 of In the Hot Seat. I'm Michael Fauschette, and I'm joined by Steve LeMay, who's my co-host for this episode. And if you've been following the show, you know that we ended a five-part series on sales the last episode, so 2 weeks ago. And we're starting a new series this week. So the series is called AI Friend or Foe. And the idea is to focus around what everybody else is focusing on right now too, and that's AI and particularly large language models. And for this series, we have three different views. We have one view that's focused from an academic or educational perspective. That's today. And then we have a B2B focused one that talks about use cases there, and then a B2C program that also focuses on consumer use. Now, for our repeat viewers, thanks for joining us. For if you're new to the show, we do this every 2 weeks. We put industry experts or customers in the hot seat for what we hope is a lively discussion, debate, and even a little discourse as we try to humanize the digital experience. And all aspects of the customer lifecycle are up for discussion, as well as the technologies used throughout each phase of the journey. And then just a quick note, hopefully this bug gets fixed soon, but if you're on LinkedIn and you have problems with the live stream, there is a bug there that you may encounter, and you can go to YouTube or Facebook if you want, and it will let you actually watch more than a 2-minute loop of the entire show. Anyway, with that, I have a couple of things I wanted to set up with this. One is as I was doing the questions, working on the questions for this show, I just had this crazy idea. Why don't I have ChatGPT do the questions for our show? So the 10 questions that we have that we're going to use today, and whether we get through all 10 or not, but are generated by ChatGPT 4. So it'll be and the questions were good. They didn't really require edit. Steve, I know you looked at it. I mean, what did you think about the questions?
I think it asks some excellent questions. In part, of course, as an academic, I'm looking at it from the perspective of a lot of folks in my field are panicking a little bit on this, and it's creating some peculiar markets. And one of the questions I've raised before is, how much time do we as academics want to spend policing what students are doing with ChatGPT? Right now, of course, it doesn't exactly go out and write your doctoral dissertation for you without, I want a dissertation on blah. It doesn't do that. It's far from that. At the same time, there's some concerns, so we need to discuss it, and we need to figure out how we're going to do it.
Yeah, it's interesting. This morning I was flipping through LinkedIn News, and I came across an article from last week from the Washington Post. That the columnist Jeffrey Fowler was taking a look at a new product that's being released this week from a company called Turnitin, and I know Turnitin, and a lot of high schools and colleges, universities use it as a plagiarism checker. But they have a new version that's oriented towards detecting the use of a GPT engine or large language model in your assignments. And as a part of that article, he did a test with 5 high school students to have them do 16 samples of either real AI fabricated or a mixed source essay and run it through that detector to see what he got. And over half of them were at least partially wrong. Now, Turnitin claims a 98% accuracy rate, so not sure how that works out, but the at least partially wrong. So, and in one case, it flagged an essay that was absolutely 100% unique and not generated by the engine. So it's an interesting experiment, and I guess it sort of points to the fact that we are a little bit focused around the dark side and maybe less focused around the light that we might see in this.
They given some experience with Turnitin, one of the things that you run into is it will flag things like Abraham Lincoln was born on such and such a date, or and other things along those lines. So you end up having to pick a floor at which you go, okay, 20% plagiarized according to Turnitin is okay. What level you choose is individual to some degree. And, is 36% too much, or is 30% too much, or is 20%, or do you need 10%? In which case you're making people go back and rewrite Abraham Lincoln's birth was on such and such a date, as opposed to Abraham Lincoln was born on. And so it gets a little bizarre at times, and it becomes a policing operation that may go beyond what we're really looking at.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I mean, I think that just sort of points to the whole topic that we really want to go through today, and that's the idea of the use in the educational environment or academic environment, and how our guests, we have two guests, focus around that. So why don't we bring in the guest? And Steve, you want to do an introduction? I know you know both of them well.
Sure. One of the guests is Dr. Ali Green. Ali has 25 years of industry experience in hospitality. She's been a director level in airlines, hotels, and has been teaching here at not just here, but other places in the hospitality realm. She has also been quite innovative in bringing students in and into technology and using technology as part of the pedagogy consistently over time. She started doing that with Second Life. So that was, as most of you know, with many years ago when Second Life was more or less a thing. So Dr. Green brings an intriguing perspective to the field. And then Keeley Meentze is with Clemson University. She also has her own company, Keeley Company, LLC, which seeks to help educators explore the use of AI in the classroom and in a number of other areas. She's had her own business now for 3 years, and she's been developing university-level international marketing curricula and other scenarios for education at Clemson University. So I think we have two intriguing guests to speak to these issues.
Great. Welcome.
Hi.
So I'm curious, before we jump into questions, you heard that discussion a little bit around Turnitin and the Washington Post article. And I'm just curious, what do you guys think about that? I mean, is this a reaction, an overreaction, a necessary thing? I mean, kind of where are we with that?
I'll go first. I think it's a great tool. Turnitin's a great tool, but one thing is it learns off of the other. So the repository is this. I put in a paper and then I correct it, put it in, and it will show 100% because it's off of my own paper. And so knowing how, and I think this is going to be our conversation today, is knowing how to use these tools as an educator is so important. Because if you don't know the 100%, you may go, they're plagiarizing, and the student had put it in a few days before editing. So it's, again, a tool. How do we use it? How is it going in it? Absolutely. They need to be on the forefront of how to use it with other tools that are coming up so fast and ferocious with us right now. I don't know, Keeley?
Yeah, I was going to agree with you, Ali. I was going to say the same thing. Was basically like, I think it's really important that these companies that are at the forefront of this, like Turnitin, are working towards this detection software. That I think is going to be really important, especially as you said, AI continues to integrate and evolve. But again, the most important thing I would think is for that tool to be coupled with other strategies and things inside the classroom, not just like, as Steve said, used as a policing tool, right? Like, if you want to play cat and mouse with your students, then that's up to you. But I think that's not really what is going to be beneficial with this detection tool. I think it's going to just supplement what we're already changing and innovating in the classroom, I hope.
Ali brings up an interesting point. I require students to turn in a first draft. And then they get comments back on it, and they get a second draft. So consequently, Turnitin is always going to flag most of it as plagiarized because they're just rewriting something they already submitted. So again, it's knowing how and when to use the tool.
Well, and I think it's interesting too. This is slightly different than just the plagiarism question of trying to pick out, what parts are parts actually generated by a large language model. And it almost seems like to me, and obviously you as the expert, but it seems like to me we not that we don't need something, but we're very focused around that. And I'd much rather know kind of how are you going to use this? Like, how does this help you? And it kind of reminds me of, the arguments around taking laptops to school or using Google in school, or I guess I'm an old guy. So, when I was in high school, we were allowed finally to bring calculators in. And that was a big thing, not using the slide rule. So, it's not a new topic, I guess, but what do you guys think? I mean, how do we make use of this in a positive way?
I can go first because I think it's all positive, right? Like that's why I'm in this space. Like I love education. I'm a lifelong learner and I really believe in it. And I don't think it's going to replace traditional education. I think traditional education obviously has been an amazing tool. It's advanced society. It's given us what we have now. And that's why I'm excited about it, because it's just going to innovate and make it even better. Just like you said with the calculator, I see the AI tool as the same. It allows for this. It's a tool that we can use for higher order thinking that's going to allow for more complex ideas and more complex thoughts from students, which is going to expand their current knowledge networks. And I think that's the ultimate goal of education, right? Is to expand knowledge so that students can take what they learn in the classroom and apply it outside of the classroom. And I think that AI is just going to supplement that in ways that we don't even know yet.
Interesting.
I want to kick it over to Ali here for a second. And one of the questions that we have kind of on the list, and that is, what subjects do you think these chats are going to be most useful in, and where do you think they're going to be kind of irrelevant?
Yeah, I don't think any are going to be irrelevant at all. I think we can all use them. Where I think it's going to be really innovative is more in communication, more in what we're seeing, the writing, more in drilling down to the actual learning of what can we refine? What can we use this for so that we can expand and actually have learning happen? Because that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about ChatGPT doing the learning for us. We're using that as a tool to connect our students, to connect all the learning that goes on, and to make it easier so that end result comes a little bit quicker and maybe deeper learning happens. So I see all of them. Now I'm partial to business. I think business is really important. The communication that goes on in business, the things that we do in business, I think it's going to be essential here, because when we connect the students out to industry, which is what we need to do, we need to be on the cutting edge. What are they doing? What are they doing in social media? What are they doing there? I know I can't speak really to the coding and all of that, but I think it's going to be essential in that area. So it's going to be everywhere in higher education. And it's just, how do we harness it to get the learning to happen? Again, we're trying to get people out into the industry that they're studying. For us, is our industry ahead of us, or are we trying to catch up? So,
it strikes me when I work with companies or with AI, a lot of times we sort of start with this really big general picture of what does AI do for you, or what could it do for you? And I sort of think of them in two use cases, really simplistically. One is, what are the things that I could automate that I don't really want my employees doing so that they could focus on other things? And then the other one is, instead of automating tasks, how do I make that employee better? How do I help them make better decisions by giving them an assistant that helps them do certain things? Do you think that applies in the education setting for ChatGPT 2, or is there something like that paradigm that would work, you think?
I'm going to give an actual example, if this is okay, because my whole career is, especially, again, can speak a little bit in different areas, but is bridging the academia into industry. that's everything that we do, especially in business education. I'll talk about, and for higher education, having a conversation with the CEO. It was about a month ago, and he was talking about specifically about marketing and how he was thinking about automating some of that marketing, because employees were just, too much time was wasted on whatever it was in the marketing. And I said, have you tried this? Have you tried putting this in? And as we were talking, I was doing it on my computer as we were talking, and I to spit out a social media calendar for the next month for tourism. That's the example. So we need to do that in the classroom and show that in the classroom, so that when these students get out to industry, they're not wasting their time spinning their wheels when they should actually be doing some other things. So that's an example.
That was a ChatGPT generated calendar.
Yes, and I'm going back. The CEO totally didn't know about this, right? And I am like, oh my gosh. And of course, I'm the innovator on the diffusion of innovation. I'm all about it, and I'm doing everything. I went out. I went out and did my AI thing for my photo for LinkedIn. He did not know, though, is my point. We're so far. There are some of us that are so far ahead, and we're so far behind, if we will. But it's introducing industry of how best to use it for employees across industries.
Well, one of the things about it is people like Michael and Keeley, for that matter, are, if you're already in this space and and looking at this industry. When I first brought it up in the classroom, most of my students had never heard of it. And that was maybe 6 weeks ago. They didn't know what ChatGPT was. They looked at me like, what kind of an alien technology are you talking about? So that also suggests that there are a lot of people in industry that are not yet familiar with it.
Oh yeah, no question.
And one of my students works for a publishing company and spends 75% of his working day writing. He writes marketing materials for this specialty publishing firm in healthcare. His CEO thinks that ChatGPT is the greatest thing that ever flew, but his direct supervisor, the manager and chief editor, is going, no, that's not right. And he's struggling with the fact that Bard will not go on his workspace email, but he can still use ChatGPT. So.
Interesting. I mean, Keeley, can you comment a little bit about this? Because I know, I talked about learning how to do things, and Ali, you kind of hinted at this too, that we need to be training people, teaching people in a way that puts them in the context of what they're going to do when they're working, like after
Yes.
they graduate, right?
Yes.
So can you comment on that a little bit? I mean, how could you use it in a positive way, and how much would this help students, you think, if they could learn how to do this effectively?
Yeah. So what I was going to say when he was talking about like subjects, what it's going to use. And when Ali was like, all of them, I was, yes, that is my whole idea, is that it's a mediator, I would say a communicator, a translator between all of them, right? Mm-hmm. So like I said, the whole idea, the whole goal of education is to transfer that knowledge so that it's applicable in real life situations, especially in higher education, where students are going specifically for a major to go out into the world and contribute within that major, right? So I think ChatGPT does and these large language models does a really good idea of connecting these concepts that otherwise would be in completely different fields. It's really good for interdisciplinary work. So interdisciplinary biology, working with, not only other things like chemistry and other sciences, but also language and communication and, marketing. I work with international marketing courses at university level. So those things they incorporate a lot of different things, culture, biology, and all those things. And that's what I think is the main benefit of ChatGPT is like providing a communication tools where those things can talk to each other, where the educator and the learner can talk to each other and provide for like a collaborative learning experience, building off of what the student already knows and what the professor, the educator, can then provide to them based on what they already know. That's going to extend knowledge networks in a way that, you know, I think is unprecedented, you know, and with ease. The unprecedented part is the ease of it, right? So it's going to allow this expansion of knowledge, this concentration on niche, this bringing new ideas and expertise into the classroom that I think is going to connect and expand the collective IQ of society and forward advanced society in a way that, you know, I don't even think even me being in the space and can predict or prepare for, you know, that's where I see it.
Ali, how do we integrate it into other kinds of learning? That is, what policies do we set, and how do we go about saying, here it is, here's how to use it, here's when not to use it? How do we come up with answers to those questions?
I think, you know, just real quickly, I want to go with, I'll answer that, but learning styles, right? That's controversial anyhow, but learning styles, we can learn all differently. I was just going to expand on what Keeley said with that, because to embrace it for learning styles, all different people learn different ways. And then, you know, Steve, we have policies. We have policies at the university level. We have policies at the state level. And then let's talk about just ethical, right? Right and wrong, cheating, not cheating. Are you using your phone? Are you texting during class when you shouldn't be? All of those things. So I think it goes back to just understanding what it is, understanding the tool. So Michael, it's going back to the calculator, and you can today cheat off the calculator, right? You could come in with your answers in the calculator. So it's the policies, Steve. To me, in a syllabus, that is the starting point. It is at the university level, teaching and learning centers, to embrace it, not just the fear of it, but to embrace that it's here, and to embrace what your expectations are. Do you expect to turn it in, or whatever they use at their university or college? So it's those policies and the expectations that are clear and clearly communicated from a professor level to students, and to work with the students on it so that everybody is on the same page. It's moving so fast. If I write it today, I think by the fall, it's going to be obsolete, right? So it's, how do we embrace it, understand it, especially on a campus that maybe not everybody is embracing it.
So we have a couple of, well, actually, we have a fairly lively chat going on about this and some good questions coming in. So I thought maybe we take a break and take Christy's question, because this kind of fits into where we are in this conversation anyway. Do students need to learn how to do the research first before they use AI? What does that look like in a classroom setting? I mean, how would that come? How do those come together, I guess?
What is the research question, though? Sorry, Keeley. What does it mean to do the research? What type of research? Are you talking at a doc level? Are you talking about at an undergrad level? That would be more of my question.
Yeah, I think it's more at the in the undergrad level. And actually, one of the other comments I saw on here was, they were talking about my calculator example and saying this is considerably more powerful. I think that's correct, by the way. But I think if you go back to when I was in high school, the calculator was a miracle thing, because I'd been using, these slide rule things, and so the calculator was an amazing productivity enhancement, right? But anyway, there's the other statement in here that I didn't bring up, was that they said, should there be limitations, like, oh, you can't use the calculator when you're in elementary school, but you can use it when you're in high school, when you're in advanced subjects, but then you can't, things like that. So is that the case with this? Is it, when do you use it and how do you use it, kind of a question?
So what I was going to say originally, because when I first read the research question, I just thought about, even just not from a undergraduate or upper higher education, higher level way, just doing research in general. We learn the scientific method and the research method when we're in, secondary school. And that's where I was thinking about it. And I think this question first, to start to answer it, I need to kind of explain, I think one of the misconceptions I think that a lot of people have about ChatGPT in particular, these large language models, is exactly what they are. So ChatGPT, I'm talking ChatGPT and this large language model, ChatGPT 3, 3.5, and 4. That software cannot live search the internet. It's tokens. Tokens are like their data points that they use to insert into the equation, into the algorithm that's going to make the prediction that comes out. Those tokens stopped, according to OpenAI, in 2021. So any information that it has in data, that it has in the software, stops at 2021. So it's not like Bard and Bing where it can like search the internet as soon as you type in the question. It's not live searching the internet. So it's not always going to be factual, and it doesn't know if it's factual or not. Like all it is just a really, 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 really good prediction model, like the predictive text on your iPhone. You know, if like you like can click, 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 and it will predict what you can say. What you want to say. That's what ChatGPT does at the most basic level. Just it's really, 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 really good at it. So sometimes it comes out with factual information, because especially if that factual fact was written on the internet multiple times prior to 2021, where they got the tokens, where on the internet they pulled the data from. Similarly, in the same vein, it could give a really wrong statement if that wrong statement, that unfactual statement, was written on the internet multiple times wrong before 2021. So I think that's where you need to start, is realizing that ChatGPT is just a language model. Like it's just predictive text. So that means it requires intelligence and critical thinking to evaluate, is this saying something that's factual? Is this saying something that's correct? And that requires a research mind. Students need to know where to find that information to confirm or deny if what ChatGPT is spitting out is accurate or not. And that's where it's going to shift. Like we're now going to be grading for accuracy. If they just turn in a ChatGPT spit out thing, then it's like, okay, that's what ChatGPT said, but is it accurate or is it not? And if it is, why? And if it's not, why? And that's where we can really develop research skills, critical thinking. And it is going to take, students don't know where to look on Google Scholar. I just was teaching high school, and seniors in high school, I had to give a whole lesson, research 101, how to find a primary source, how to check your sources on the internet, where to search. And I mean, I think that's an essential skill that everybody's going to need to have, especially now that we're going to need to check this AI.
I do a couple of things that I think may be useful in this case. I require what I call a prospectus for a paper, which is 2 or 3 sentences on this is what I'm going to write about, and here's a list of the references that I'm going to start with. And I tell them, you can change your references, but I typically, for a 3.5, 4-page paper, I require a minimum of 15 references. And the whole idea is, this is business writing. So you're supposed to take a lot of information and put it in a little space. You're supposed to be succinct. The CEO does not want to read a lot of big words and long sentences. They want to read here are the facts and here's what you should do about them in short order. But the other thing is, ChatGPT doesn't give you references. It just gives you, this is what we think. This is what we've got access to, as Keeley pointed out. So the context in which we choose to either allow or even require students to use one of these models or another or both, this is where the academic rubber hits the road, if you will, and that is, should we use this here, or is it better used there? And to what degree do we show students this is how it works? What you're talking about with high school students, I have to do regularly. I have a short video on my YouTube page that is how to go to the library databases and how to go to Google Scholar and find refereed academic journal articles. Here's what to click. Okay, there's not exactly how to click, but how to query. That is, what questions should we ask these LLMs in order to get good results that are actually useful and make good use of the tool, i.e. the hammer hits the nail, not your thumb.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's interesting because it seems like there's sort of two ways to think about this. One is think about how do you use this with a certain amount of ethics and integrity in a classroom environment and learn. And then how do you learn? How do you teach them how to use this in the context of what you're going to do next? What are you going to do in the business world with it? So that makes me think that there probably are some reasonable guardrails that need to be put in place. So
Mhm.
so I don't know if you two have thought about that, but I don't know, maybe Al, you start. What do you think the guidelines and policies should be around this and Chat GPT in the classroom?
Yeah, I just, it's funny. I'm sitting here reflecting on Christy's question about, because that's the institution of academia is what she's asked, and it's the research. And so it's moving things forward in a thoughtful way. And that goes to your policies. Again, I do think we need to address these now, because I would hate to see that we're doing something such as not addressing them and thinking everybody's going to know how to do it. So some guidelines would be great. But it's higher education. We should be doing critical thinking. We should be doing all of these things that come out. So my question is it the learning that we're looking for? I'm familiar with and created a MOOC. And there it is. All the answers are out there, right? We can go and get education free now if you want to. So the question is, do you want to learn, or do you want to just ignore what's going on and where we're going with it? My thing is to embrace it. How do we bring it in? Policies are going to have to be addressed. Yeah.
How does this shift us as educators from focusing on content to focusing on process and evaluating content?
$1 million question, Steve. That's the $1 million question right now. Yeah.
I did a doctoral symposium in Vienna a month or so ago. And at the end of the session, one of the doctoral students asked me this question. She said, "You've been teaching since 1978. What has changed the most? What is the biggest change you've seen in that time?" Well, I go all the way back to when I was an undergraduate, which goes back to 1967. And during those times, it seemed to me that the professors were the fonts of all wisdom, i.e., we were supposed to be the source of everything because we knew how to go to, professors knew how to go to the journal articles, professors knew who wrote the journal articles, they knew how to get to databases. Data were difficult to get and to find. And what's changed now is it's not a question of can you get data, it's what out of all of that mess of data out there is important to the question that you have now. That is, we are trying now to help students figure out a process for navigating lots of data, some of which may not be accurate at all. And so they need to be able to evaluate, and ChatGPT is just more data to some degree. Here's a bunch more data. It happens to be in words, not numbers, but here it is. Okay, is this any good?
But Steve, as you're saying that, it reminds me that why are we really, I mean, this is going to sound holistic, which I am. Why are we here? What are we doing? At the granular level, especially when we talk about institutions, we look at student learning outcome. We look at the Bloom's taxonomy. We drill down all the way to say, what do we want at the course level? What do we want at the program level? And those are out there. And so we've got to go back and say, is that what we really want? Or do we just throw data out there so the students can learn whatever they want? The point being is our job here is actually in the teaching and learning, right? And the researching. Researching is huge in higher education. Let's not forget about that. That's a huge part of our job. So, I mean, that's really where we need to have those policies that support the teaching and learning that are going to come in, I think, rapidly, especially as we close this semester over the summer. I think we have
Mm.
a lot of work and to watch what's going on and all come together and figure that out.
Well, also, how does it affect us as writers
Yeah.
in research? There are people who have cited ChatGPT as a co-author.
Yeah.
Or is it something where you put an asterisk up there and say ChatGPT was used in the process of developing this paper?
Yeah, well, I told you I did an experiment with a blog post on Friday, having it not write the blog post, but I'd already outlined and had all the details of what I wanted. I just had it do sections, and then I edited the sections. That it saved me a ton of time, which was my point. And then I did actually cite in a note that I used it for research, mostly, but also a little bit of the content. I mean, is that a reasonable way to do that in the classroom? Is that a reality? Is that something that could happen that way? Using it as an assistant, in other words?
Makes you think. Go ahead, Keeley.
Yeah, I was just gonna reiterate what you said, Allie, where it's like, I really liked what you said when you were like, I think we just need to think about the focus, like rethink about the focus, rethink about the goal. What are we trying to do here?
Mhm.
And Steve, again, what you said was another point that I was going to make. I think there's two ways to think about education and knowledge. It's like skill-based, right? What are we teaching people how to do, giving them the structure to do, and then content-based, knowledge-based. What information are we giving for them? And they have to work together, right? You have to have the structure, but you need to have something to put into the structure to make it work. Like they're married. You can't separate them. So I think that this AI is just another tool that we as educators are responsible, in my opinion, to teach our students how to use, because we're preparing them for the real world that they're, especially in higher education, that they're about to go into. And I mean, the Future of Jobs report by the World Economic Forum just reported that 85 million jobs are going to be eliminated by AI, which is like, oh my God, scary. But 97 million jobs are going to be created because of AI as well. So that is our students are going to be entering a workforce into a work environment that is unprecedented. And it is up to us as higher educators to prepare them for that. And that means preparing them with the skills to use the new tools, these innovative tools, this AI. And then once they have the structure and the content, they can go out in the real world and apply it. And I think that is what's going to be the most effective and best positive part about this, is that transfer of knowledge that makes it into working memory that they can then take out of the classroom and apply in real life situations, which is ultimately the goal.
Bertrand Russell said that there were two kinds of work. One was actually moving goods physically around the planet, and the other was telling other people to do that. To some degree, in higher education, when people are getting degrees, a good portion of what we're trying to teach people is to how to tell other people to move things around the planet. So that's where AI comes in, but you also end up with, to some degree, some mixture of AI and robots that are actually physically moving goods around the planet on top of that. And there are a number of ethical questions that go with all kinds of AI, not just the chats, but AI for cutting material more efficiently than people do in the textile supply chain or something. But a big one with all of the technology, including this, is the question about privacy.
Yeah.
And that is, when we are detecting for ChatGPT, how intrusive can we be and should we be in terms of following our students around and going, okay, let's look over your shoulder and see did you type that yourself, or did you have somebody type it for you? I don't think we have good answers to that yet. And I think we're going to get idiosyncratic answers right now. I think our colleagues at both institutions, at the University of West Florida and Clemson University, are going to vary in terms of how they look at this.
I mean, it strikes me, for listening to all three of you, really, but it strikes me that what we need is somehow you incorporate this in that whole structure around how do you do research? How do you learn critical thinking skills? And how does this new tool play in that? I mean, much like, when you're teaching a high school student how to search for something, I mean, that's a skill. It's not innate. And if you don't search for the right thing, you never get the right answer. So, I mean, is that did I say that correctly? Is that how you think it should play out? It should be incorporated in those tools in that curriculum?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's like, well, one of the questions I see that I got was, how does academia need to change or accomplish this goal? And I think that, again, it's just thinking about, what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to what are we trying to get students to understand? What concept are we trying to get them to add into that structure that they have? And the easiest way to do that is to know what they know first. So I'm writing a paper right now, and my paper proposes that the way that we can do this with ChatGPT is by making the students ask ChatGPT and themselves elaborative interrogation questions, which basically just means questions based on why. So why do you think that way? Why? And when they have to explain, that eliminates the illusion of explanatory depth, which is where you think you can understand something, but then when somebody says, explain it to me in detail, you're like, I don't know much about it as I thought I did. That's a real problem in education these days, for sure, especially when we take it out of context and put it in the classroom like we always do. It's like we take these concepts, we teach it in a silo by itself in a vacuum. And then when students go out into the real world, they're presented with the same problem, but they can't identify it. So this ChatGPT, if we give students really broad assignments, in my paper that I'm writing, we outline 3 different ways to do this, but the main idea is to give them a really broad prompt, and then they're going to use the ChatGPT in a way that we would never even be able to think of, and that's going to be able to tell us more and foster and innovate this developing educational environment that's going to eventually benefit us all by just exploring what the student knows and then expanding on that. And it's just going to take innovating assignments and tweaking them just a little bit. No longer write me an essay on this. Maybe it's like, have ChatGPT write me an essay on this. Tell me what you told it to get it to write the essay, turn in your prompts, and then edit that essay and give a reflection. Like, why was this essay right? You basically just have to think about assignments that would be weird if they asked their friend to do it for them now. So opinion questions, reflection questions, things that if I copied it from a friend, it would be really weird for me to turn that in now. Same type of thing. It's just that reframing. It's not as difficult as it sounds. It's just a reframing thing.
I haven't tried this, but I think it might be interesting to do, and that would be ask ChatGPT to write about something, explain something. I did this with all of my students in one class. They each had an industry. I said, explain the supply chain in industry X for 25 students. I posted it for all of them. I put it all in one document, stuck it up on Canvas. But my question now would be, okay, I might ask one of the other LLMs to evaluate what the first LLM did. Yeah, how good is this?
I think a lot of people are focused on, how are my students going to use this? How are my students going to use this? Student use. And what really I find really beneficial and have found beneficial as I'm doing this research is, why don't we just think about it from the teacher's perspective? How can teachers use this? You know what I mean? Just like you said, Steve, it can evaluate a paper now. That's so awesome. You don't have to do that anymore, And I put in a whole class summary. I was just like, we have this international marketing class. We're doing this, this, and this. It wrote me an entire syllabus week by week. Did we use that? No, but did it give us some good ideas? Of course. So it's we're not turning in that syllabus as our own, but it's a really good idea generator. It's fostering this creativity. It's pulling things out of students that you wouldn't be able to do by yourself.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, it seems like you're talking about incorporating the tool in a context that helps the student learn how to apply that to different problems, right? So I could use this as a research assistant. I can use this to help me frame these ideas that I already have in a new way or different way or whatever. And then lastly, it sounds like it's a way for professors, for teachers to learn also how to apply this and help them jumpstart some of the things or do things faster or easier or whatever.
Yeah, interesting. For sure.
Well, I hate to say it because I could keep talking about this for quite a long time, because it is extremely interesting. But it is all the time we have today. So, Keeley, Ali, you both survived the hot seat.
Yeah,
Actually,
thank
I don't
God.
think the seat got
Woo,
that
we're
hot.
honorary players now. We did it.
You did
We're
it.
new
You did it.
players.
So, from the audience perspective, if you think you have what it takes to sit in the hot seat, let us know because we would love to put you on one of the future shows. So that's the In the Hot Seat episode for today. Thank you all so much for joining us. I'm Michael Fauschette.
I'm Steve LeMay.
Tune in next time for different faces, different topics, and different perspectives as we put somebody different in the hot seat.